Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here for this morning's press conference. Today, we will be talking about the budget review. We want to say thank you to you, the press, who are here, and we want to say welcome to our viewers who are here in St. Lucia as well as in the diaspora. With us today is our party's chairman, Mr. Thurl Prudent, and he will be dealing with the poultry agriculture efforts by our government. Next to him is the former minister, or on my right rather, is the former Minister for Equity and Social Justice, Mr. Leonard Spider Montut, who will be dealing with the declining subsidies projected in this budget. On my left is former Minister of Economic Development, Mr. Guy Joseph, and he will be dealing with, among other things, the CIP and the slow recovering efforts of the economy. Our topic, broad topic, is the dismal performance of the St. Lucia economy, the slow rate of recovery, and the continued scandalous leadership of the Philip J. Pierre administration. I will give a brief remark, and then I will have our first presenter, and then we'll follow that format. Since time immemorial, we have been told that agriculture is necessary for the survival of an economy such as ours, not just because of the foreign exchange which it can generate, but it is vitally important for food security. Over the last few years, we have had an apathetic and lackluster approach to agriculture that confounds the average mind. Our party chairman, Mr. Prudent.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And allow me to say a pleasant good morning to everyone. This morning, I want to focus my presentation on the performance of the government in terms of agriculture here in this country. For hundreds of farmers here in St. Lucia, I would say that the SLP have become a symbol of hopelessness. I hope you're hearing me this morning, that I am saying loud and clear that for hundreds of farmers, including myself, a farmer, the St. Lucia Labour Party government have become a symbol of hopelessness. So you see, no matter how much they try to sugarcoat their dismal performance in terms of the management of this sector, it is clear to everyone that this government have betrayed the trust of the farmers of this country. These were people who went out to vote for a St. Lucia Labour Party who told them that they would have done much better than an Alan Chastanet-led United Workers' Party government. They went to the polls wholeheartedly and cast their vote for a bunch of deceptors. Because right now we are looking at the performance of this government in terms of the agricultural sector. And folks, it is dismal. It is very, very dismal. You look at, for example, from their own, the Economic and Social Economic Review for 2023. Let's have a look. For example, just give me a moment and I will focus on that. We're looking at, for example, 17% decline in agriculture. This is a lot. 17% decline in agriculture in the year 2023. And guess what? It was not just in one sector. This particular decline was throughout every single sector in the agricultural area, from livestock, we had almost an 8.5% decline. We had fisheries. This was in trouble, or it's still in trouble. Bananas and other crops were all in decline in this country, which means that our food security here in St. Lucia is in a very precarious situation. Folks, I am not just saying this because I am the chairman of the United Workers' Party or I speak for the United Workers' Party in this area of agriculture today in my presentation. I say it because these are not my words. These came from the Economic and Social Review of 2023. A government production. This is what was presented to us. And you ask yourself, the Prime Minister says that part of it, of that decline for agriculture, may well have been because of inclement weather. I'm asking him, even if we were to give him the benefit of the doubt, to say, well, bananas because of inclement weather, what happened to livestock? So you mean when lightning and rain fall, you can't produce livestock? Does it mean that, we can't do any better than that? We are heading down a very precarious track and path right now in our country. That if we cannot produce enough to allow our people to be able to put bread on the table, we may soon have a situation of starvation here in this country. Or it may result in government having to import simple things that we could have been growing here in this country and partaking and eating of it. The Prime Minister have always also made a big show of constantly blaming the United Workers' Party for its woes. And I ask again, how can a party with 15-2 representation in Parliament believe that a party that is represented by 2 persons in Parliament is a challenge to their performance? That's not true. The United Workers' Party is not a challenge to the performance of this government. The United Workers' Party is not seeking to put impediments in the way of progress here in this country. If anything, the United Workers' Party wants what is right for the people of St. Lucia, and when it is wrong, it is our responsibility as an opposition to hold them accountable. And that we will always do. Folks, it's not good. Because if you think of at all levels, output will see a substantial amount of decline in all sectors. I mean, what do we have here? When a government cannot even produce cardboard boxes in the bananas and other crops or the oranges, I mean, what is this? Is this like a republic, banana republic? Are we dealing with a country that is so much in decline that it cannot even produce boxes? But the sad thing about it is, at a point where everything is declining, all sectors, all portions of agriculture is declining, I don't even think that there is a need for boxes. Because how can you produce or even give boxes to farmers if you can't produce it in the first place? But even if you could, it means that they have nothing to export. Because, things are really, really in a bad situation here in this country. I want all critically thinking St. Lucians to think about what I am saying here today. Let's put our politics on the side and let us look at the numbers. Let us look at what's happening here in this country. And I will say to you, if you are not biased, and if you love your country as a patriot, which the Labour Party do not think that we are patriots, but we are very much patriots, maybe more than they have been, because we do care about what's happening in this country. And so I'm saying to all St. Lucians, please, please, think of where we are headed. Think of the dangerous slope that this government is leading us into. The level of perceived or actual corruption within their own government, the management of our economy in general, and more so in my presentation, agriculture. And I am saying to us, if we cannot even get a hold of our agricultural produce here in this country, we are done as a people. Thank you very much.
And so we've heard from the party chairman, Mr. Thurl Prudent, about the découché budget. Everything is down, production is down, livestock is down. We cannot secure our food security. It's all about découché. Now we have our former Minister of Equity and Social Justice, Mr. Leonard Spider Montoute, putting the people first. It's a great soundbite, but when backed up with protecting the victory, it becomes a cacophony of off-key singers who sound more like charlatans who believe that they alone have the divine right to rule and control. How can you put the people first when you reduce subsidies meant to make their lives a little bit better, and instead of giving them handouts, giving them handouts like you're doing them a favor? Mr. Montoute.
Thank you very much, Laura. Good morning to members of the media. Good morning to those of you listening online, whether in St. Lucia or in the diaspora. And this morning is my task to take a brief look at some of the government policies, in particular the tax policy, and what they have done with regard to the subsidies that St. Lucians grew accustomed to enjoying. So let's look at this last budget. In this last budget, we were promised no reprieve from the government's burdensome tax policies that has seen an increase in collection of taxes from a people already saddled with high cost of living. With the high inflation, we see that we are experiencing exorbitant prices in groceries, for example, and other commodities. This situation was not helped by the imposition of a 2.5% levy on goods and services, further compounding high taxation and leaving the tax-paying population with less disposable income. The result of this mindless, heartless, unconscionable situation is a contraction in the domestic economy at the small business and community level. The almost doubling of excise tax on fuel and other petroleum products is another example of an insensitive and callous government only interested in generating revenue at the expense of its citizens. This also had a ripple effect on inflation, since, as you would well appreciate, high fuel prices brings about other increase in prices. Just take, for example, what we have seen to date. Quite apart from what they refer to as imported inflation, given the high price of food and other commodities that are imported, here we have compounded the situation with the 2.5% levy. And of course, as a result of the high gas prices, we have seen the increase in transportation fees. We have seen an increase in the price of bread. And there is an increase in just about every commodity you can imagine that involves and includes transportation. And so, with this high price in fuel, I have indicated that there are implications for other commodities. And this creates a situation where the plight of St. Lucians was also further exacerbated by the lowering of subsidies. For example, let's take LPG, cooking gas. This is a commodity just every household utilizes. And when, for example, a single mother has to pay an increase in the price of LPG because our government, after gouging all those taxes and boasting about the exorbitant collection of taxes, refuse to allow St. Lucians to enjoy the benefits of all those accumulated revenue, they instead lowered the subsidy on cooking gas. The subsidy on cooking gas decreased from $19.24 per cylinder in 2022-2023 to $16.16 in 2023-2024. That, again, I say, is unconscionable, given the fact that on the international market, we had seen a decrease in the price of fuel, which was not passed on to the consumer in St. Lucia, but instead, the government took the opportunity to further extract revenue from the people of St. Lucia. In addition, the more than $15 million that have been collected, I believe it's about $17 million to date, from the 2.5% levy. Okay, and that, of course, we are mindful, we are reminded that was done in a very deceitful manner, making the claim that it was for health and security of the country that this over $17 million was collected. Nonetheless, we have seen no improvement in our healthcare. We have seen no improvement with the crime situation here in St. Lucia. We are therefore saying to the government, given all the largesse that you enjoy right now with the revenue that you have extracted from our people, thereby reducing and limiting their ability, their spending power, use that same money to abate the hardship that you have created for those people by returning the subsidies to the levels that they were before. One of the subsidies we want to see is an increase in the subsidy on LPG, a lowering in the price of fuel, and the subsidies that were removed from some of our staples like rice, flour, and sugar be reinstated. That, I believe, will go a long way in alleviating the plight of St. Lucians who are already reeling from high cost of living and inflation, and will give especially the single parents who have to grapple with caring for their children, sending them to school and so on, it will go a long way in making life a little more livable for them. And so we are calling on the Philip P.S. SLP administration to desist from its policy of tax gouging and give St. Lucians some reprieve in the domestic economy and a chance to thrive in the interests of the average small and micro business that operates in our country. A UWP administration would relax the tax burden on St. Lucians and thereby giving them more spending power and putting more money in circulation at the community level. It is no secret that when you squeeze the average common man, that you are crippling and stifling the economy. Restaurants suffer, grocery stores suffer. At the community level, there is hardly any money in circulation, and so people feel the hardship while they tout artificial figures about unemployment and growth in the economy. So again, I'm saying that the St. Lucia Labour Party, if they are true to the promises that they make, that they are made to the people of St. Lucia, they should relax the policy of tax gouging that they have imposed on St. Lucian. Thank you.
Putting the people first. I have just been handed a document that I will make public, and I will read it to you. Well, two documents, rather. I will read it to you, and it speaks to how our government puts our people first. If you're not for them, you're against them. And if you're against them, they have little or no time for you. So we've received this invitation from St. Lucia Cruise Ports, Global Ports Holding, yes, the Global Ports Holding, GPH St. Lucia Limited, dated April 29th, 2024, which was yesterday. The Honorable Mr. Alan Shastney, Leader of the Opposition, Uwanora House, Castries. Dear Mr. Shastney, recommencement of cruise operations and the management of related services by GPH St. Lucia Limited. The management of Global Ports Holding St. Lucia Limited hereby extends an invitation to you to attend a special ceremony to commemorate the commencement of cruise operations and the management of related services by GPH St. Lucia Limited on Tuesday, which is today, April 30th, 2024 at 10 a.m. at the Queen Elizabeth II Docks, Port Castries. This event will symbolize the culmination of negotiations between the Government of St. Lucia and Global Ports Holding, GPH, marking the commencement of a transformative partnership. We thank you for your kind consideration to this request and would appreciate your presence. Yours faithfully. Now tell me, how do you appreciate someone's presence when you send them an invitation one day before the event? Now, my father, a very, very strict disciplinarian, has always told us, growing up, if somebody doesn't want you somewhere, they will tell you at the last hour. Okay? So here is the response coming from the Office of the Leader of Opposition, 30th April 2024. Mr. Lancelot Arnold, General Manager, GPH St. Lucia Limited, Castries. Dear Mr. Arnold, I acknowledge receipt of your invitation dated 29th April 2024 to attend a commencement ceremony on 30th April 2024, and in spite of the well-publicized fact that I have and continue to be out of state attending to a family emergency, I thank you for your invitation. I must remind you that no attempt has been made to date to engage or to inform the opposition of the terms of this concession, despite our public statements and a public letter to the Prime Minister. Hopefully, this invitation is an indication that your company has recognized the necessity for public engagement, which should include the opposition. For the time being, it would be irresponsible of me or anyone else from the opposition to attend, as it may be construed as an endorsement of this agreement. In light of the fact that your company was awarded a 30-year concession, there's magnanimity in giving Jack his jacket. The St. Lucia Labour Party speaks of improvements that they have made along the way, but they are never generous enough to say that the man who went before them or the party who formed the government before them had laid the infrastructural foundation. Rather, they place their own foolhardy attempts at mummigaing the people at the feet of their predecessor, even while there is glaring evidence proving otherwise. Case in point, the CIP. And when called to account, they sink low to uttering unsubstantiated Bellelesh statements. To further expound on this is Mr. Guy Joseph.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jean-Pierre and Mrs. Jean-Pierre and members of the media, those following us online and via GVD. I will seek to address a number of issues at this press conference today in relation to the budget recently presented and other matters that continue to confront us in this country. And I always like to quote the information that I am going to give you. And I'm going to read just a short excerpt from the Prime Minister's budget address for 2024-25. On page 3, or before I go to page 3, maybe I should read a section on page 1. It says, Mr. Speaker, my address contains the reflections on my government's performance since assuming office a little over 2.5 years ago and its plans for the ensuing year. As has been the case, our plans are rooted in the principle of accountability, transparency, truth, and integrity, the cornerstones of credible, trustworthy, democratic institutions of government. Mr. Speaker, our task in building a better St. Lucia has been made a little more challenging with the virtue of truth and its value in enabling public enlightenment and human upliftment seem to be totally lost on some individuals who wish to lead our country. Now, if that is the premise on which the Prime Minister addressed the Parliament of St. Lucia, and by extension the people, that his government's principles is accountability, transparency, truth, and integrity, why do we still not know anything about this GPH deal? Where is the disclosure that was promised on what the arrangements were with GPH? Why still so much secrecy about the investigation and the briefcase, the passport briefcase? Why so much about the lands at Banans that we have not heard anything more about? So much for transparency, accountability. Today we are still hearing that the ports in Viewfort cannot be developed for the next 40 years, while GPH has taken over officially the operations of Port Castries. And the question remains, what is the long-term implication for cargo vessels? Who will they have to pay to? So I am saying this so that people can understand what is happening to us. I also want to note on page 2, the positive change in economic landscape permeates the atmosphere as citizens go about their daily lives. Our social economic policies have shielded the population from the full impact of inflation while providing new job opportunities for those seeking work. Now, when a government can say that its policies, and this is documented by a prime minister, and I would assume that many persons were involved in writing the speech, and can write a lie like this and document it, because we will show from the social and economic review that the government, rather than increasing subsidies, reduce subsidies, which means that this very line that they did what was necessary to cushion the impact of inflation on the people. I will show you from the social and economic review that this is another lie in the speech. And I remember the Prime Minister saying that we should fact check him. Well, I did some fact checking on the Prime Minister, and I can deem this a lie. Here's what he says on page 3. it says, we will continue to build upon our previous successes, which have resulted in impressive economic growth rates of 11.5%, 20%, and 2.2% in GDP after a contraction of over 24.5% in 2020. Another lie. Another statement that cannot be defended by the government. So here's what it says. We will continue to build on our previous success, which resulted in impressive economic growth rates. How do you move from 11.5 to 20 and then all of a sudden you go down to 2.2 and you call that impressive? If you move from 11 to 20, then I expect you to move from 20 to 30, and I would call that impressive. But I always know the Prime Minister's maths is questionable. So he considers now we are 2.2, and he considers that impressive. But you see, the records will show that this information given by the Prime Minister is not good. It's not truthful. In fact, the record will show that St. Lucia today is the slowest growing economy in the OECS. And these are not my words. These are the words of the Social and Economic Review. So let us highlight. I will, on the summary page, which is Roman numeral 12, well, let me say it, X and II. So they don't say that I said the wrong thing. X10 and the two ones, which makes it 12. So I just gave the figure for clarity. Public debt in 2022 was at $4,395.1 million. In 2023, it is at $4,783,000,000, almost a 400 million increase in debt. Now remember, this is the government that spoke about for the first year they had to do no borrowings. And all of a sudden in the last 2 years, which means that our debt to GDP, which was just at 69.5% in 2022, has gone to 72.9% in 2023. And these are just preliminary figures. So let me explain to the people of St. Lucia what that means when we talk about debt to GDP. It means that in 2022 there was 31 cents basically to do everything you had to do to run the affairs of government after you paid your debt. In 2023, you're down to 23 cents or 27 cents. Yet still the Prime Minister, so 72.9, you can round it off to 73 cents of every dollar earned in the GDP will pay debt. And you have 27 cents left to run the affairs of the country. And the Prime Minister tells us that his performance is impressive. I don't know what that means. Now, my colleague and chairman of the party highlighted, but I will give you the actual figures. Banana exports in tons in 2022 was 5,118.3 tons. In 2023, banana exports went down to 2,282.4 tons, a reduction of 55.4. So the Prime Minister says that his performance is impressive, and the total revenue from bananas fell from 5.3 million to 2.9 million, a drop of 45.3%. That is the most dismal performance. And I did a quick calculation last night that the Minister of Agriculture has been paid in excess of $400,000 in salaries for the last close to 3 years in government to kill the agricultural sector. Now, I would give anybody basic advice. If something is dying, let it die on its own. Why hire a man? Pay him almost $400,000 to kill an industry when you could have just saved that $400,000 and let the industry die by itself. I mean, basic common sense would tell you, you did not have to pay a man to kill the banana industry. You did not have to pay a minister of agriculture, and you have a whole ministry, and everything in the Ministry of Agriculture is on the decline. To the point now, we are hearing that certain companies have been given the license to import chicken without buying any local chicken in St. Lucia, which is another nail in the coffin of agriculture and the poultry industry. And then the Prime Minister tells us in his speech that his performance is impressive. Now, if that is impressive, I don't know. Now, here's what he said. Inflation. He said he has cushioned us against inflation. Inflation in 2022 was 6.4%, and in 2023, it is still 4.1%. And it remains one of the highest rates of inflation in the OECS. For that matter, the average inflation in the OECS is lower than that of St. Lucia. He says unemployment rate was at 16.5% in 2021. No, in 2022, it was 16.5%. Remember when we left government, or prior to COVID in 2019, unemployment was down to 16.8%. So all they had done up to 2022 was get back to where we were. Today they are claiming that unemployment is at 14%. But yet still, the Social and Economic Review is warning that these are very preliminary figures and should be careful. One should be careful how they use it, because it is very preliminary and it is based on a new method of calculation. Now we need to understand that. I will show you why they said unemployment is so low. So here's what the world market says. Declining goods inflation amid easing import prices have partly offset the persistent service inflation tied to tight domestic labor markets. Despite this slowdown, prices remain roughly 40% above pre-pandemic levels. Crude oil remained volatile, but subsidies averaging $77 per barrel, or 16% lower than 2022. So if fuel is 16% lower than 2022, you can go and do the math. The basic price we should be paying at the pump should be $15.08 per gallon. How much are we paying at the pump? And that's for gas. I didn't do the calculations for diesel. And if they want to figure out how I arrive at this calculation, I can give them a lesson or two in how to calculate this, because the evidence is there to show that if fuel is at that price, and I will show you what this government has done. Now, we have a few areas. We started off as the fastest growing economy in the OECS after COVID. And the Labour Party took credit for it. But I can establish beyond the shadow of a doubt today that it was the policies of the Alan Chasney-led administration that set the foundation and the platform for recovery. And they have squandered the recovery process. They enjoyed the first 2 years of the momentum. And we know what momentum is. When you switch off a vehicle and it was traveling at high speed, it will continue to run for a period of time until the momentum that was pushing the vehicle forward stops, because there's no longer horsepower to push the engine to push the vehicle because the engine is off. That is what we left. Labour Party has switched off the engine of this economy, and we have found ourselves at 2.2%. And this 2.2% is not even growth. It is really recovery. Because, and I will show you, because I'm not the one saying it, you know, it is important for our people to read and understand. So in year 3, when the policies of the Philip J. Pierre administration has kicked in, we jumped from a growing economy of 20% to 2.2%. What percentage drop is that? 1,000% drop? Yes, 2 into 20 is 10. So really, we have 1,000% drop in the growth in the economy. And I want them to challenge me on these figures, because you see, when they go to debate the budget, they will not raise these issues. St. Lucia, the fastest growing economy, the leader in the OECS, has now found itself as the slowest growing economy. Can you believe that St. Vincent, with no CIP, grew by 6% in this year that just ended there? And St. Lucia grew by 2.2%. Everywhere else in this OECS is growing more than St. Lucia. And under a UWP-led government, we became the largest economy in the OECS. Last year, the government told us they expect between 6 and 8% growth. That was the projection for St. Lucia. We ended up at 2.2. So, inflation is down from 6.4, but I will give you where this happened and why it happened, because part of what I read there is just to highlight that world market prices is what caused the price to go down. Now, the government knows that this is not true, the unemployment figures. But have you heard from the minister, Virginia Poyot, talking about workers, and St. Lucia may have to import workers? I know for a fact, and I'm stating it on this program, that these figures given about unemployment being so low is to pave the way for a certain company to import workers into St. Lucia. And those of you who heard Reno Gajada on Tim's Newsmaker Live would have heard him saying that there's no unemployment and there's no poor people in St. Lucia. So, the Labour Party is paving the way for workers to be imported in this country. And my understanding is some workers have already been imported. I want to know, how did they get work permits to work in this country? Now, fuel is lower by 16%. how is it that fuel is the highest in St. Lucia than it has ever been? Several countries have surpassed, in fact, in the Caribbean region, 11 countries have surpassed their pre-pandemic numbers. St. Lucia is not among the 11. So that means we are 12 and below. Can you imagine St. Lucia being the last in the OECS? This is a dismal economic performance that the Prime Minister calls impressive. When a man can tell you he's impressed with himself. So can you imagine a man going and play cricket, and he goes for this extravagant cover drive, and he scores, and the ball cuts back and shatters into his stumps. He's bowled for a duck, but he tell you, boy, you saw that extravagant shot cover drive that I played, not realizing that he never made contact with the ball. That is what Philip J. Pierre is doing in this country today. He calls his performance impressive. 2.2%. We are not even back to where we were, and you're calling that impressive? Now, I know what they're going to say, and I never give the media false information. They're going to tell you the economy, they collected more money. Yes, they collected more money because they collected more taxes on us. There were less taxes under a UWP government. And I will show you how they collected more money. So, this is a dismal performance. Some government provided relief to consumers for higher prices in 2023, but it was not the government of St. Lucia. And so I can ask people who want to follow and challenge what I say to check page 7 of the Social and Economic Review. So let me give you the information. It says, despite having to navigate the challenging external environment, including global economic slowdown, Caribbean economies continue to rebound from the pandemic, albeit at a slower rate in 2023 compared to 2022. So all we are doing is we are on a rebound. We are recovering. The Labour Party government has done nothing to grow this economy. All we are doing is we are on a rebound. And I'm not the one who said it. It says, as a predominantly tourist-dependent economy, the ongoing recovery in tourism was the key driver for regional economic outturns. So if tourism, listen to this, total visitor arrivals almost reached pre-pandemic 2019 levels. Isn't it the same Prime Minister who told us the only person in the world who believed that tourism will go back to what it was Alan Chastanet? Well, Alan Chastanet must have been a prophet. While nobody else knew that, he knew that tourism would recover. Now, let's see what it says. Monitoring downward international movement, including for shipping costs, inflation rates eased, although price levels remain elevated, such as food prices supported by rising consumer demand. This prompted some governments to provide relief for their consumers from high prices in 2023. So this is what some of the OECS countries did, and some of the countries in the Caribbean. They provided subsidies to cushion the impact. St. Lucia removed subsidies to cause the prices to be higher. Driven by a continued recovery, real GDP in Barbados is estimated to have grown by 4.4%, double the growth of St. Lucia. And when UWP was in office, we were already ahead of Barbados, and we were growing at a faster rate than Barbados. Now, The growth outturn reflects positive and slower rates of economic expansion in all member states. But here's what it says. Most notably, real economic activity in St. Vincent and the Grenadines increased to 6.6%. So how could St. Vincent, with less tourism than St. Lucia, less agriculture than St. Lucia, no CIP, be able to grow their economy by 6%, while St. Lucia's growth or recovery was only 2.2%. Now let me give you the stats on page 11. So I will give the average for the ECCU members is 4.3%, is the average growth. If you take the number of countries, you add all their growth. If you take the growth of each of the countries, you add it up and you divide it by the number of countries, it gives you the average. So the average growth of the OECS is 4.3. But I will give you the breakdown. Antigua Barbuda grew by 3.9%. Dominica by 4.7%. Grenada by 3.6%. St. Kitts by 2.3%. St. Vincent by 6%. And St. Lucia by 2.2%. The worst performing economy in the ECCU members. That is all the countries using the Eastern Caribbean dollar and under the central bank of the ECCU. St. Lucia is the worst performing economy. Now I will give you a little more. Inflation for the same period. The average for the ECCU is 3.8%. St. Lucia is at 4.1%. The inflation in St. Lucia is higher than the average of the OECS. And I will give you the same breakdown because I don't want them to say I'm giving wrong information. Antigua and Barbuda 5.1, Dominica 3.5, Grenada 2.7. A new government in Grenada. A prime minister that they brought to tell them who they should vote for in St. Lucia knows how to keep inflation down in Grenada. He couldn't give our prime minister an idea instead of focusing on the leader of the opposition. He should have told him what to do to keep inflation down. How could inflation in Grenada be 2.7 and it is 4.1 in St. Lucia? St. Kitts, it's 3.6. And St. Vincent, it's 4.6. So this is an upside down government or a back to front government. Everything that should be going up in St. Lucia is going down, and everything that should be going down is going up. So your growth rate should be going up, it's going down. Your inflation should be going down, it's going up. This is what we have for government. Now, time will not permit me to highlight every aspect of this budget that I really want to touch on. But I want St. Lucians to understand what we are up against. So a government that should provide some government relief would have reduced bus fares. We should have reduced bus fares. But under this government, we have increased bus fares. We have increased bread price. We have the 2.5% health and security levy. Fuel is kept at an artificially high price. Food prices are higher in the supermarket. Now, we said inflation is down. Tell me which commodity you saw in a supermarket that the price has gone down. Maybe the public, well, not maybe. I go to the supermarkets too. I've not seen the prices going down. So how could inflation be down? How could shipping price be down? And yet still, every week, the prices are going up. And when they questioned the Minister of Commerce about it, she said, don't go there. Kill it. Kill it. And I asked the media to investigate which manager at Massey is related to a minister of government and switches off Newspin whenever Newspin comes on at Massey stores. I have asked these questions, you know, because the dictatorship they want to run in this country will not survive. Now, food items have gone up. Imports for farmers. You know why farming production is down? The Social and Economic Review highlights it. That the input for farmers have not been subsidized, and as a result, the prices of inputs have gone up. Passports have gone up. Now you want to raise water because the Minister of Infrastructure indicated that you can afford to buy 2 beers and get drunk by the road. Why can't you pay more for water? I want St. Lucians to remember it was Labour Party who has raised water by 166.5% in their time. Never under UWP government have we had an increase in water from the 1980s to now. So we used to compare St. Lucia with Barbados, not with the rest of the OECS. Now we are last. We are at the bottom of the table in the OECS. Inflation is higher in St. Lucia than in Grenada, Dominica, and St. Kitts. Dominicans used to come here and shop. Grenadians used to come here and shop. Everybody, St. Lucia was like already the capital of the OECS. What has happened now? Our prices are higher than their prices. St. Lucia grew at half the average of the ECCU members. Half. Can you imagine? And the Prime Minister says he is impressed with his performance. I know that people have to be impressed with you. You cannot go out there and say, boy, I'm impressed with myself. No, you let people sing your praises. You don't go and praise yourself. So, apart from being the slowest recovery economy in the OECS, we are not even yet where we were with COVID. There's only partial recovery. And I want to turn to page 12. Page 12 of the Social and Economic Review, because it is important for us to understand that. It says, following strong partial recovery in the immediate years after the onset of the pandemic, economic growth in St. Lucia began to normalize in 2023 at a positive rate against the backdrop of headwinds in the external economic environment. After recording double-digit growth rates in 2021 and 2022, preliminary estimates indicate St. Lucia's real GDP grew by 2.2%. So, in the recovery process, even the recovery process has slowed down. In fact, I can highlight for you on page 12 that tourism recovery is only at 80.9% in St. Lucia, while Barbados has fully recovered to pre-2019 numbers, pre-pandemic numbers. This is the reality that no member in the government will come and tell you the truth about what has happened. So, on page 13, I want to show you how wicked this Labour Party government is and the Minister of Finance. Hear this. I want you to listen very carefully. On page 13, it says the positive performance was mainly due to higher sales revenue from alcoholic beverages, which rose by 21.5% to 330.3 million, and food items by 15.4% to 207.6 million. So where did the revenue come from? Higher prices on alcohol. Now I'm not so concerned about the alcohol. You can do without the alcohol. But when you have food prices, prices are higher by 15.4%. When on the world market, it is saying in the same book, looking at international developments, that global prices are trending downward. How could food prices be up 15% in St. Lucia? Who is looking after the interest of the average St. Lucia? You see what is happening to us in the economy? You see why you don't have a government? Listen to this. Agricultural output in 2023 was hindered by the confluence of supply-side factors such as the rising cost of inputs which producers passed on to consumers. I wasn't telling you a story when I made the statement. Lower output was recorded in all subsectors in the review period. Accordingly, real GDP value added in agricultural sector is estimated to have contracted by 17%. Now, what happens when you have an increase in price is that the government can simply go back to the base price and don't charge more money. But they refuse to do that. The last area I will touch on before we take your questions. I mean, they boast about the growth and the job creation. And they highlighted the projects, and all the projects, 99% of the projects, Cabot, St. Jude Hospital, Hiranura International Airport, the Dreams and Secrets Hotel in Canel, all of these were UWP initiated projects. Nothing new from this government. Now, I indicated to you because I want you to understand on page 56, and that is what I will close on. Because if we as St. Lucians don't understand what has happened to us, it says here, the strong performance was occasioned by an almost doubling of the excise tax receipts on petroleum products. So months ago, when I kept on saying to the people of St. Lucia that the government was practicing tax gouging, they were double charging us on the price of fuel. When I said they were giving the fishermen $1.50, but they were charging them an extra $2. People were saying, you're just talking politics. Look it in the Social and Economic Review. Page 56, last paragraph. This strong performance was occasioned by the almost doubling of the excise tax on petroleum products to 68.7 million, owing to higher excise tax rates and larger volumes coupled with lower subsidies on LPG. So when the government told you, when Mr. Montoute highlighted, they cut off $3.08, I think, on every tank of LPG on the poor people of this country. The excise tax rates on gasoline and diesel per gallon rose from an average of $2.56 and $1.69 respectively to $3.64 and $3.90. These are the figures. And St. Lucians, you know what they did with that money? That money was used to finance jazz. That's what the report says. Not myself. I didn't say that. It is in the report that government transfers was almost doubled in some instances to entities and primarily to support the jazz festival. The Prime Minister, and I want the media to clarify that for us, they have indicated, we have heard one minister say that about 2,000 people got the $1,500. We have heard another one say 500 people. On the Social and Economic Review, page 60, it says here, income support stimulus extension to over 200 beneficiaries costing 0.5 million. So while the government is touting that they have given so many St. Lucians the 1,500, the Social and Economic Review is highlighting that only about 200 people, and it is only $500,000 that was spent on that. I want to let you know on the issue of the CIP that St. Lucia remains very concerned. We have highlighted our concerns. We do not want St. Lucia to suffer as a result of the bad decisions of the government. The Prime Minister indicated that the company is in St. Kitts is a fraudulent company. And I want to ask the media to convey that to the Prime Minister. If you know your colleague in St. Kitts has engaged a fraudulent company in the sale of CIP passports, show us the letter that you have written to the Prime Minister of St. Kitts, alerting him that he is dealing with a fraudulent company. Because a passport issued in St. Kitts gives you free access to the OECS. And this is raising serious concern about the integrity of the CIP program within the OECS. Because this is not an ordinary man on the street who said that it's a fraudulent company that is involved there, you know. You're talking about the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, who sits together with the other heads of government of the OECS and stating that there is a fraudulent company involved in the sale of CIP passports in St. Kitts, and you don't want the European Union and the Americans and all other persons who where you get access by using St. Lucia's passport to be concerned when prime ministers are saying other countries are involved in fraudulent activities, or the countries are involved in fraudulent activities with the sale of passports. So if he knows that the company over there is fraudulent, does his colleague know that the company he may be dealing with in St. Lucia is fraudulent? And have they informed him of such? You see, these are the real questions. And these are the issues that must be addressed. But UWP remains very concerned about the cost of living, the high inflation, the artificial high prices. Gas should be around $14.50 today because the government could cut 50 cents on its intake and reduce gas below. You have collected more than 68 million that you should not have collected, and now you are cutting out the subsidy on other commodities that can bring relief to St. Lucians. It is time that we hold this government accountable. And I say to all St. Lucians, we will discuss further the areas of this budget that is detrimental to us, and we will show you that this is a dismal performance, that the man himself is impressed with himself. But I say, the rest of us in St. Lucia, we are not impressed with your performance, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you.
And so you have heard it. We have a government which is unsure of where it's going. It's bereft of ideas. What should be going up is going down. What should be going down is going up. We have not yet recorded growth. We are only recovering. And even in our recovery, we have not gotten to post-pandemic, pre-pandemic levels, which is very, very concerning. There's lots of things I could say, but we have gone on for a while now, and I will open the floor now to you, the media, for questions. Yes. Can you state your name and your media house, please?
My question is on the CIP. So we've heard now that Philip Martinez, that is the gentleman from MSR Media, who is making the statements and who is asking the Prime Minister to come and review the evidence that he has of wrongdoings or fraudulent activity in the CIP. The Prime Minister and the Minister for Investment have both gone on record as saying that they will not take on the gentleman's grievance as their own. What we want to know is, if the invitation is extended to the opposition to come and review the evidence, will the opposition take up the opportunity?
I think I can safely speak on behalf of our political leader. This is not a discussion that we've had, but I believe that anything that can be done to save St. Lucia future embarrassment and sanctions should be done. How does it hurt? They've gone to Dubai a dozen times since they're in government and have returned here with nothing. What does it take to just go to Washington, see what is there, and then make a determination that, look here, this is useless. What you are trying to tell us there is not of any value. And if the Prime Minister and the Minister does not have to go, isn't there an Attorney General? Are there not other persons in government who can suitably represent the government? But this is a trend with the Labour Party. You remember the situation with Jufali, when the British was asking that the immunity be withdrawn from Jufali? What was the response of the government? The response of the government was, this is a private domestic affair. We are not interfering with it. But yet still you gave him a passport to avoid having to deal with his private domestic affair. So, because he never represented us at the IMO, he never attended the meeting, 4 members of the Jufali family had diplomatic passports which granted them immunity. So is that strange? We're still in court with Greenberg today because an agreement was signed to lease our seabed. And what St. Lucians need to understand about the Greenberg matter, the seabed, it was not just signing the agreement, you know. It was when the agreement was coming into effect. You know, there was a clause in the agreement that said, until we had not demarcated our boundary line with other countries, and you know there's always been disputes about the boundary. So even if the agreement was for 5 years, the 5 years would only kick in, begin to count when you had met the requirements in St. Lucia. So that is why we are still there. And if St. Lucia, for whatever it is worth, how does it hurt to just go and find out from the lawyers, is there really something that we should be concerned about? Is that too much to ask of St. Lucia? So you want our name to be... So now, why didn't the Prime Minister go there with the evidence that he have to show that this man is a fraud? Why didn't he publish the information and say, you are a fraudster and we are not going to deal with you? But what he has said, just made a statement like he said, we know who's committing the crime. I know everything that's happening behind the scenes. Isn't that what the Prime Minister said? But crime continues to escalate in this country. So it is evident that the Prime Minister and the Minister, they have something to hide. If they tell me, come, let me show you what I have, why would I be afraid of seeing what you have?
Mr. Deputy Leader, is the UWP at all concerned of backlash? Because initially it was the UWP that initiated the agreement with Caribbean Galaxy, which is the company in question. So what was different when you guys engaged them to come in to work with us? And are you at all concerned about any backlash from this CIP thing on your doorstep?
Okay. We are not concerned because we were very clear in our manner of operation. In fact, our Prime Minister, Alan Chastanet, at the time was the first one who said that it is a race to the bottom and that the OECS should agree on one price for CIP. And we should create an OECS fund where all the revenues, regardless of which country was selling the CIP, would go into that fund. And then it would be used within the OECS countries. So our due diligence process was impeccable. In fact, we were slower on sales because of the level of due diligence that we were doing in St. Lucia. So we were never concerned about the issues pertaining to Galaxy because we had the measures in place. We were not selling below the stipulated market price or agreed price in St. Lucia. But there is evidence that CIP passports are being sold below the stipulated price. And we did not have any company in China vetting for us, as far as I know. Now, I like to be very clear. I don't know that that had happened. I don't know if the CIP board had done that. But to my knowledge, our due diligence process was done at the regional level, at the international level, with Interpol and with all of the international agencies that was responsible. So we had a very robust screening process. We cannot say the same for this government, given the speculation and what we are hearing and the lack of transparency on the part of this government.
Still on the CIP, what is your take on the fact that St. Lucia now has visa-free access to India? That has been added to, India has been added to one of the countries that our passport can access visa-free. What are your thoughts on that?
I believe that this is a very good move. So you would understand that it reciprocates in most instances, and I'm hearing a couple hundred Indian workers coming to St. Lucia. So you must understand that when a government moves in a particular direction, not all of their actions are genuine, but I welcome the initiative of being, anywhere you can get visa-free access, I believe that's a good thing. So This is something that had been in the making, because I remember we came with a list of countries, and these things don't happen overnight. These things happen over a period of time, process of negotiation and discussion and everything. But I am very suspect of the Labour Party for the simplest reason. I knew even before that announcement was made, the workers that had been identified to be brought to St. Lucia to work. And all of a sudden you see they saying unemployment is at its lowest, and everywhere I walk the streets I find people desperately looking for a job and cannot find any meaningful employment. You just heard, if you listened to Newspin yesterday, you would have heard that a contractor on the West Coast Road was saying the challenges that they face with paying their skilled workers and the price at which they are taking the jobs, and how a Trinidadian company coming here to work with the company building the road is able to pay the workers more because they're paying them a higher contract price. And I know how these things work. So let me give you a simple synopsis of it. They bring in their own trucks. They get tires duty-free. They get fuel duty-free. They get the pads duty-free. Because they price the project at a duty-free price. But if they hire a local trucker, the local trucker does not enjoy the duty-free concession on the tires, on the fuel, and on the parts. So he has to work below the market price in order to compete with the company having their own trucks, or to be at the same price range. So by the time our local trucker works with these companies, he's more at a loss. The same concessions that are passed on to these entities coming into St. Lucia should be passed on to all our local equipment operators and truckers in order to be able to compete. And that is what we were doing when we were in government. In fact, the concessions that these foreign companies are getting were the concessions that we gave to all our local companies. Renault, CIE, Nationwide, Fresh Start, Skelly's Construction, all of the major contractors were given the duty-free concessions. And that is why our locals cannot compete, because this government has not created a level playing field for our local workers to work.
Speaking of the hardships of local workers, Minister Poyot yesterday at the cabinet briefing was speaking about the minimum wage. And I've noticed that the talk was about a livable wage, but I noticed there's a shift from livable wage to now minimum wage. And whereas before they were saying that they were going to give every industry a minimum wage, they're now saying they're putting a minimum wage across the board. What is the stance of the UWP on this minimum wage versus livable wage argument?
I always support a minimum wage, but the minimum wage should be a livable wage. I don't know why we want to make a distinction between the two. Because to me, the salaries or the wages in your country should be on par with the living standards of your country. Because why should I be working a month or a fortnight and I cannot feed myself, I cannot buy clothes, I cannot buy shoes, I cannot provide myself with the basic necessities? So on the issue of the minimum wage, and I've said to St. Lucians, when we had the labor code introduced, everybody thought the labor code would have solved all our problems of employment in St. Lucia. Do you realize that government, which is the largest employer in the country, is not governed by the labor code? So these are the things that we need to understand. So there is a lot of speculation. Now, I carefully noted the words of the Prime Minister. He didn't say it will be implemented.
Is it an announcement?
He said hope. He hoped. He hopes. And when they tell you immediately and it takes 5 years, so I don't know how long hope will take. But I'm just saying this, that you know why I believe the government has moved from livable wage to minimum wage? Because the cost of living in St. Lucia is now so high that the average worker cannot afford to make ends meet. So if everybody have to put their livable wage on the table, will businesses ever be able to afford in this economic environment? Government is the only one making money in St. Lucia today. Everybody else is granting, and the government is boasting about the millions that they are making, and it is not being put into good use. Because our roads are still in a deplorable condition. Our hospital, our health care, our security, everything is in shambles while the government is collecting millions. And I am telling you, every free jazz ticket that will be issued out this year is paid for by the subsidy that was reduced on LPG gas in St. Lucia. Go and count how many tanks of LPG 20-pound cylinder that is sold in a year, and multiply that by $3, which is what the government reduced it by, $3.08. And you will tell me how much money it came up to, and you will see how much money is spent on the jazz. And then diesel, they were charging over $2 more on every gallon of diesel, and another extra $2 on every gallon of gas in your car. This is what this government has done to the people of St. Lucia. No more questions?
I have a question to the minister. You made mention of 17%. You said $17 million has been collected from the health and security levy to date. Is there any indication, is there any clear indication in the social economic review what those monies were used for, where they were allocated?
So in this present social and economic review, it is reporting 12.5 million, but that's for the financial year. But remember, it started before that. And so if the amount collected, it is not reflected either in the budget of health or the budget of security, because one is up by 3 million and the other is at the same rate. So based on the figures in the estimates of revenue and expenditure for the financial year 23-24, there's no reflection that the amount of money collected on the health and security levy is being spent either in health or in security. So the Ministry of Finance was correct when they told us the money will go into the consolidated fund and will be used as they see fit. The Prime Minister tried to make us believe otherwise. I believe that this money was never about health and security. It was about security, not national security. It was bank security in order for them to borrow the $100 million from the World Bank. You have a question? Good. Thank you, madam.
That's yours. Do we have any other questions? No other questions? Any of the other panelists want to add anything to what has already been said? Okay, so if nobody has any questions, I want to thank you so much for being here. I trust that you have been educated further on what's happening. You know, this country is not anywhere near where it should be, and it's not anywhere near where our government would like us to believe that it is. I have been your moderator for today. My name is Laura Jepianuel, and I will see you next time.